Well, hello again, church. I hope that you're having a great week. If you were with us this past Sunday at Fusion City, you know that we were in week 4 of our study through the book of James, and we looked at the first half of chapter 3, where James introduces us to the significance of our speech and our language and how we think and how we talk, because how we talk or how we speak, it gives indication of what's truly in our hearts. And so what I wanted to do for our time together today or this week was to look at the second half of that chapter, where James introduces us to this idea of the contrast between true wisdom and false wisdom. And so I'll start reading for us in verse 13, and then we'll talk about that just a little bit together. So James says this. He says, "Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom." Now, what I love so much about the book of James is that he doesn't just introduce an idea or a principle or a thought and then move on to something different, but it gets reiterated lots of times throughout the book. And one of the things that James continues to reiterate for us is this relationship between faith and works, that what we believe should impact what we do. That's true of our speech, that what's in our heart should come out in our language. And here again, James reiterates this idea as it pertains to wisdom, that one who claims to be wise will conduct himself in the meekness of wisdom, that he'll act as one who is wise. In other words, what James is saying is you can't claim to be wise or think yourself to be wise and then act like a moron. Like, you just can't do that. Those two things are inconsistent. That what's in your heart and the wisdom that you believe should manifest itself in how you act and how you conduct yourself. And so there is a difference between what is true wisdom and what's false wisdom. Let's keep reading. Verse 14, he says, "But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but it is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." And so again, what James is saying, there's a difference between true wisdom and false wisdom. And I think all of us would agree with that. We've all experienced something in our life where we've seen someone believe something that they thought was right and true and pure, but from an outside perspective looking in, we know that what they're believing or what they're holding to is just not right. It's not good wisdom. It's not true wisdom. It's a shadow or a false wisdom that they're buying into. And so James gives us these 3 characteristics, 3 ways that we can identify false wisdom. He says, first of all, false wisdom is earthly. It has no perspective of eternity whatsoever, that what happens in the here and now is all about the here and now. And so people who are buying into false wisdom with only an earthly perspective, it impacts and influences how they spend their money, how they live their lives, how they make decisions, how they interact with other people. Everything is done with only the here and now in view, with no perspective and no thoughts about that impacting eternity whatsoever. One of the dangers of this is that it provides no room for us to be able to deal with difficult situations in our life, because the difficult circumstances that we encounter only impact and only affect the here and now. But true wisdom, on the other hand, would say that with eternity in perspective and with an understanding that there's something after this, something to come later, that what happens in the here and now in our current circumstances are doing something that impacts eternity, and that allows us to cope a little better or to deal a little better with difficult circumstances. True wisdom gives us the ability to navigate those things because we have some kind of view of eternity in mind. The second thing James says is that false wisdom is unspiritual, that it has no awareness of the presence of the Holy Spirit in our lives. It has no awareness of God's dealings in the interactions of our human life. It has no view of spirituality whatsoever. It's very selfish. It's very self-centered and self-focused. And so that's what James is saying, that false wisdom is not spiritual, it's earthly, it's human. There's no supernatural thoughts of it whatsoever. And then the third thing that James says is that false wisdom is demonic. Now, I know that a lot of us get a little spooked out by the idea of demons, but ultimately what James is saying is that false wisdom is evil. Anything that is contrast to God and his purity and his righteousness and his goodness is evil. And the Bible tells us in other places that we are born enemies of God, that in our natural selves, in our fleshly bodies, in our humanness, that we are inherently bad. We are inherently enemies of God. We are inherently evil. And so hearkening back to, again, what the verses says, that false wisdom is rooted in selfish ambition and jealousy. And those things are very self-centered and, again, self-focused. And what James is saying is that when we think only of ourselves, that we're thinking selfishly, and that in itself it's demonic. It's evil for us to think in a way that's only for our benefit and for our good. And so when we do that, what we do is we supplant the truth of God and his ways with our ways, where our truth is the only truth that we adhere to. And James says that's evil. Don't think like that. That's false wisdom. Be careful of how you think about the things of the world, that it's not your perspective and your input only, but consider the things of God. Don't be selfish. Don't be jealous. Think of it in the ways that God would have you to think of it. And so when we think about false wisdom in those terms, it's really easy then for us to understand if that's false wisdom, then true wisdom becomes almost self-explanatory. So I'll read it for us again, because James does give us a good picture of true wisdom. He says that true wisdom is from above. It's from heaven. It has eternity in view. It's pure, then peaceable, it's gentle, it's open to reason, it's full of mercy and good fruits, it's not selfish or jealous, it's impartial, and it's sincere. And where righteousness is sown in peace, peace is also harvested by those who make peace. And so here, again, it's to kind of sum up everything. This is what James is saying. False wisdom is rooted in earthliness and selfishness and jealousy. And true wisdom considers eternity and the purity and the perfection of God's will. So this will be my challenge to you this week as we kind of navigate through this text, and to answer some of these questions. How do you spend your days? What influences the decisions that you make? Is it all about the here and now, or are you living your life currently according to true wisdom that's lived with eternity in view? Well, what guides the decisions that you make relationally or financially? How are those things influenced by how you think? Are they done with the here and now in perspective again, or are they done thinking about God's influence in our lives with eternity in view? Is your life marked by selfishness, or is it marked by selflessness, where you think of others as much or better than or more than yourself? As we navigate through this and think about true wisdom and false wisdom, these are the ways that we can tell. So I hope that you'll spend some time thinking about that this week, and I hope to see you again this weekend at Fusion City Church.